wanted to say thanks to people who contributed items and information to Christy for the mini museum display cases that she works on through the course of the year. I'm sure a lot of you have seen those and enjoyed them. And Christy, wave your arm or something in case people don't know you. She's in the back there. And we really thank her for doing that too. Our program today will celebrate the 75th anniversary of our town hall, this very building. Chris Schorer will present information on the bequeathing and construction of the building. The second part of the program will allow many of us to reminisce and remember older times in the town. We at the Historical Society hope that we'll get some good ideas for future programs, perhaps from the discussions that we have. And speaking of programs, if any of you know of or belong to a Bailey's Harbor family interested in presenting a history program, please come forward and encourage your friends and neighbors to do the same thing. Every family has a history. And although we are not geniuses with technology, you know, we get by, and I think we've made some pretty nice presentations that the community has really, really liked. And in fact, I think one of the, well, two of the best were Chris Shore did the McCardle family last year, did a genealogy presentation, and the Crowes family, and Herb is here today, the Crowes family orchard program was one of my favorite ones, actually, never dreaming I'd be interested in a farm, but there I was on the edge of my seat. It was great. I want you to know that our historic trays and are for sale at the back if you'd like one. We also have DVDs of past programs. And if we don't have the program that you had in mind, you know, let us know because we can have one made easily enough and send it on. Our memberships are $15 for individuals, $25 for a family, $50 for a business, and $150 for a lifetime membership. So like if you're feeling really hale and healthy, a lifetime membership might be just the bargain you're looking for, I think. And we have membership forms in the back to fill out. You can just leave them with one of us. Carol Schmidt will be here for a while. Lynn will be talking later. Me, Susie. I think most of you know all of us. And did you put out raffle tickets today? Yes. I hope you all signed your name on a raffle ticket, and you can choose the DVD that you would like to have. And I'm supposed to warn you, near the end of the program, we will be passing the hat for a little donation to help us continue doing these things. So I always hate to have that sprung on me when I'm at a meeting for something. It's just kind of nice to know in advance a little bit. Now, on to Chris Shore. She will enlighten us as to the background of the Bailey's Harbor Town Hall, which I think is not only an incredibly attractive building, but it's so booked up. You know, when we're planning our events, like for this year, when we were planning the events we were going to have, I was talking to the town clerk like last summer already, making sure that these summers, you know, the days this summer were going to be available. It's a very busy place. It was a wonderful gift to the town. Chris is the great-niece, right? Great-grandniece of Michael McCardle, who funded the town hall and library in his will, as well as the daughter of the first librarian at the McCardle Library. So it's very appropriate that she does this. Oh, and that is a picture of Mike McCardle over by the door. Come on, Chris.
Thank you, Leanne. As she said, my name is Chris Shore. I'm a repatriated Bailey's Harbor resident. Michael McCardle was my great uncle. I have two cousins here also today, Bonnie Smith and Fred Johnson from Sister Bay. So we've got good family representation as well. The original Bailey's Harbor Town Hall was a structure of wood that stood on Bluff Road. And if we get the first slide, we'll be able to take a look at it. You can see it's the white building that's partway down the hill. When the school burned in 1916, the hall was used for a temporary school until the new building was completed, about 1918. The next slide, please. The hall was sold to Mrs. Hedwig Pyle and used for several different businesses for many years. Its final owner was Rolly Pyle, who owned it until it was torn down to build the new post office. On May 16, 1935, Michael W. McCardle passed away in Chicago, and the town learned that his will included a bequeath to the town of Bailey's Harbor to build a new town hall. McCardle was a Bailey's Harbor native son who went on to be a very successful businessman. Michael was born October 6, 1874, to Irish immigrant parents, James and Anna Nancy McCardle. He was the fourth of 8 siblings to live on the family farm just south of what is now the 10th Green at Max Welton Braes Golf Resort. McCardle graduated from the town school and went on to receive his teacher's certification from the Wisconsin Teachers Institute and taught in Sister Bay and Ellison Bay, and at that time he was just 17 years old. He later returned to school and graduated from Oshkosh State Normal College, receiving a master's teaching certificate in 1893. In 1901, McCardle graduated with honors from the University of Wisconsin Law School in Madison and was admitted to the bar. He worked for the United States government for several years and eventually ended up in Chicago with the Flexible Shaft Company. Flexible Shaft eventually became Sunbeam Corporation. McCardle started out in the sales department doing training and ended up as president of Sunbeam Corporation. His hometown of Bailey's Harbor always remained dear to his heart and returned often to visit his parents and family. In 1927, Michael initiated plans to build Max Welton Braes Resort on the former family farm at the south end of Bailey's Harbor. Construction of the country club began in 1928 and was completed in 1931. The lodge, the Wee Inn Tea Room at the property entrance, 5 cottages on the path to the lake, tennis courts, and a garage facility, which is now the Pro Shop, completed the complex. The building project provided income for many local businesses and families. In 1935, Michael wrote to the parishioners of St. Mary's of the Lake Parish, telling them of his plan to provide funds for a new church building and gifting it to the community. The new church was dedicated on May 30th, 1936, a year after Michael's death. Michael's health had been failing for about 12 years. He had been diagnosed with cancer in the mid-1920s and undergone surgery at that time. In 1932, the cancer returned, and he passed away in 1935. McCardle's will continued his philanthropy. The University of Wisconsin, where McCardle was treated for cancer, received funds that were used for a new 4-story building dedicated to cancer treatment and research on the campus. The building was known as the McCardle Memorial Cancer Research Laboratory and was dedicated in 1940 and celebrated its 50th anniversary of the founding in 1990. McCardle's death did not end his generosity to the town of Bailey's Harbor. He left $500 to each the Bailey's Harbor Women's Improvement Society, which is now the Bailey's Harbor Women's Club, and the Men's Club to be used for the general welfare and improvement of the town of Bailey's Harbor. Next, his will bequeathed the sum of $25,000 to be used for the construction of a town hall and library. He was very specific as to its construction. It was to have a basement, a heating plant, and be capable of seating at least 300 people. The exterior was to be of local limestone, and construction was to be carried out by local craftsmen whenever possible. It was to be designed by a recognized architect, and when completed, contain a library room of at least 16 by 16 feet in size. He also left funds of $15,000 for equipment and maintenance of the public library building. He asked it to be open for public use at all reasonable hours and be known as the McArdle Library. His instructions appointed the town chairman of Bailey's Harbor, his brother James J. McArdle, and William Oldenburg as the construction committee, and set their pay at 5% of the cost of the building for their services. The only stipulation was that the building be completed within 5 years of his death. The town hall building was designed by Sylvester Schmidt, a Two Rivers architect, to meet the prescribed specifications of McArdle's will. The property at Highway 57 and County F was purchased from the Hickey family. The home was moved to the north and is currently owned by the Blacksmith Inn. The town was able to secure a WA project that built the basement, did all the exterior grading and landscaping, and laid the concrete sidewalks and curbs on the street. Ed Olson Construction of Sturgeon Bay was the general contractor. A.B. Wilson of Bailey's Harbor did the plumbing and heating. Electrical was furnished by Nebel Electric of Sturgeon Bay. F.J. Stroh and Son of Sturgeon Bay painted, and Harbor Lumber Company furnished millwork and building materials. The stone came from Ed Olson's local quarry, and Henry Schultz was the general foreman for all the crews. Many local names and businesses are included in the payment ledgers. Construction began in 1937 and was completed in 1938, well within the 5-year restrictions of the will. The final total cost for the building was $50,000. In today's dollars, the bequest from McArdle was worth well over $11 million. The Ladies Improvement Club equipped the kitchen and the dining room. Herbert Erickson organized tickets to be printed and sold for a donation of $1 each to fund the purchase of chairs for the auditorium, and he raised $262. The carefully planned dedication ceremony was held on Sunday, August 21st, 1938, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Town residents and well-wishers from the surrounding areas came for the celebration. Flowers from contractors, neighboring communities, and friends decorated the auditorium. Attorney W.E. Wagner of Sturgeon Bay, who was a longtime friend of Mr. McArdle, was the honorary chairman. Reverend Vincent Cotton, pastor of St. Mary's of the Lake, gave the invocation. Following that, Attorney Wagner, on behalf of the McArdle estate, presented the building to the township. Town Chairman Herbert Erickson accepted it on behalf of the town. Next, a trombone musical interlude by Roland Anderson and John Wheelock was presented. Judge Henry Grassi of Moonlight Bay was next to address the audience. Judge Grassi and Mr. McArdle were roommates at the University of Wisconsin. Charlotte Goss sang a solo, followed by a French horn flute duet by Edward and John Dornbush. Another classmate of Michael McArdle's, Attorney John Reynolds of Green Bay, spoke. His speech was followed by a flute duet by Erna and Olga Carl. A portrait of Michael McArdle that hangs over here on the wall was presented to the town by Attorney Wagner on behalf of the Women's Improvement Society. Arthur Blanick, music director at Gibraltar High School, led the community in singing America the Beautiful. And Reverend Harold Gruen, pastor of Emmanuel Lutheran Church, said the benediction. Miss Ruby Vakes, accompanied by Mrs. Goss, played the postlude. Following the ceremony, the ladies of the Women's Improvement Society served supper to over 150 people in the basement dining room. A portion of the library funds from Mr. McCardle were used to complete a 4-story apartment on the 2nd floor to be used by the librarian. The first occupants were Louis and Mimi Hickey and their son Jim. Library books were purchased for $2,300 through Bassett Drug Store and Globe Warneke. The first month of operation, the library issued 109 cards, 57 to local residents, 19 to Bailey's Harbor children, 14 to summer residents. Mrs. Margaret Wilson received the first card. The library was open from 2:30 until 5 and from 7 until 9 p.m., Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Margaret McCardle, who was my mother, Michael's niece, was the first librarian. Her first check was for $28.05 for 93 and a half hours of work. In 1982, the town needed space for offices, and the board decided to move the library and use that room for office and town board meeting space. The old schoolhouse was renovated, and the library was moved into it. In 1994, the town undertook a building project to expand the town hall building. The addition proposed was to include a new library, bathrooms, elevator, and handicapped entrances. When the project was completed, the town offices and meeting rooms were relocated in the renovated lower level, and the library came back to the town hall location. And incidentally, the library was the room that's now the information center, so you can see just how big the 16 by 16 room was. The building continues to be used regularly for town meetings, local club meetings, private gatherings, fundraisers, community programs, and the original library houses the local information center. The grounds host many entertainment and community celebrations throughout the year. Michael McCardle would surely be pleased to know his gift has provided a long-term treasure and anchor for our town. Thank you. In case you couldn't hear, there are some things, some newspaper clippings, the original blueprints, one of the check ledgers is there, and another booklet that Mr. Sylvester wrote about when they were exploring how they were going to build the hall and what it should look like. Yes?
The local quarry that the stone came from, do you know where that's located, Commissioner?
I believe it's the quarry that's on near where the, on Double E. No, on Peninsula Players Road. I think it's out that way. Does anybody else know? The Beaver property. Yeah. There you go.
Thanks, Chris. You know, I was just apologizing. I was listening and thinking, and I forgot I actually have to come back here. So here I am now. And I'm turning this over, unless there's anything that, since we're having a two-part program today, I feel like we shouldn't wait too long to get to part 2. But were there any questions about the town hall or any comments that need to be made?
Okay, I need the microphone. Okay. You can have yours.
Okay.
I know somebody has a memory here. One of my former classmates is here that I haven't seen, well, not a classmate, he's a year older, thank goodness. But anyway, he just came and he said, I have a memory of the town hall, and it's not a good memory. When he was in Ernal Visti's 8th grade class, he had to be Santa Claus. And he said you can imagine the ribbing he got being Santa Claus. So thanks for that memory, Dave. That was a good one. I can remember, I have a memory of the town hall, and we were down here in the 3rd and 4th grade when they were building the new addition on the school. And
Yep, I was there too.
yes, Leanne was here too, and Susie was here. And the wonderful thing about it is that this is where we always had our Christmas play. So for us being here and, having a classroom, we'd go up there and we so look forward to that Christmas play because we thought we were all a star, of course, And we have wonderful memories of being so nervous and so wonderful memories of when the school was here for a while also. So it's a multi-purpose building. But Chris, what I enjoyed is just hearing about all the workmen that helped to build this, because all those names are so familiar to so many of us, and that they had an input, and they were such artisans. I mean, this building will be here long after everyone in this room is gone. So it'll be here for posterity. So, we owe a great deal of thanks to Mike McCardle for this building. And so nice having his great niece and great nephew here also, Bonnie and Fred Smith. So, Johnson, Smith. So I'm glad you're here.
I think if anybody went to the Bailey's Harbor Schoolhouse and had Ernal Visti as their teacher, every year when it was the town meeting, it was held in the afternoon. It was not held in the evening. All of us in the 7th and 8th grade were brought down here to sit and learn what was going on at a town meeting. Ernal was great into civics. We knew every officer of the state. We knew the term. We knew what election, when the election was. That was prime, and that was something I don't think anybody knows anymore, and I think I've forgotten. I remember my dad, I was Susie Pyle, I'm Susie Baldry now, talked about, he worked on the building here. He was a carpenter, and he talked about this awesome floor, which is maple, and if you look, it's very small, and it was all hand done. Nobody had the type of equipment that they have nowadays. After getting it done and they were moving on through, they looked back and there was 3 boards out of all the maple that are oak. But they had already moved on. And so later on I'll show you, they're right actually in the middle of the floor. 3 small oak. How they got in there, how they didn't get noticed, nobody knows. Kind of makes you think of the German sculptor who has done a lot of work in Milwaukee, and he had done all the balusters. He had carved them, and they were beautiful. And when they went to go through the checkout of everything, the architect said, "But sir, there's one here that's not perfect. It's not like the rest." And his comment was, "Only God can make it perfect." Which is kind of interesting. Maybe that's how that started. Anybody else have any stories? Hang on.
I brought some pictures, and I'll come over there,
Are these town hall pictures, or are these pictures?
of memories.
Okay, we're going to go into that in a minute, okay? Okay. Okay, I just want to make sure that we have every question. Anybody have any questions about the town hall? Again, Chris, thank you so much. I think we should do it again because I want to thank you all for coming. It's Memorial Day weekend. There's a lot of things going on in the county. So I'm just really glad to see so many of you here today. So thank you. And I think, Chris, you should do this again sometime. It was really informative. So thank you very much. It was great. This is the second part of our program now. And this is going to be, we called it an open mic session. And I just want to say one other thing before I forget, because I know I'll forget. I love that term, Women Improvement Society. They're still improving, Chris. So you see, that was very relevant. I think we should go back to that name. But anyway, so we're here to do the open mic session, and we invited people to come and talk and share their memories of being a Bailey's Harbor resident, and that doesn't mean you have to be here 150 years either. It just means that, you have memories of Bailey's Harbor, and we just invite you to share some of those memories. And we're hoping to limit the time because we only have a certain amount of time to spend here today, because I know you have other things to do, but we'd like you to share some of the memories that you have. So maybe we'll start with Betty, seeing she's anxious to share some of her memories. You're going to need something, though. You have to have something.
So how many can hear me?
There's a lot that will not be able to. Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay. So I go back 56
You
years.
want to introduce yourself?
Yes. I go back 56 years, and I want to introduce my father first. This is Otto Seidel. He had a dream. I'm his daughter. I'm Betty Toms. And we live over by Rebolds Creek. It's on the way to Kena Island. And he had a dream. He came from Czechoslovakia, and he wanted to buy property with trees and water. He followed an ad in the Tribune, and we came up because he couldn't drive. He had a stiff leg. So we took him all over, and he bought the property in front of Jensics. How many know where that is? By the Rebolds Creek? Okay, he bought both sides of the road, and he came up every weekend. He was almost, I would say he was obsessed. He'd take the train to Manitowoc, and then the bus to Sister Bay, stayed overnight at the hotel there, Sister Bay Bowl, and then someone would come and pick him up. His great neighbor, Joe Bino, I think you all know that, and Mr. Jensic came to pick him up. Here he's taking a rest in between his work. He was a carpenter by trade. His father was a coffin maker. And they had a truck farm there by the creek. And this was the cow barn. And he started with that cement housing. It's now the bedroom. And if there's a tornado, we go into the bedroom and we will not blow away. But he just started. This is a landmark tree that was there for many years. Here's a continued development. Came by himself, couldn't drive. He depended on his neighbors and his family. We got his lumber and his nails, and here it's progressing. This is just on weekends, as it progressed. 1956 goes into 57, 58, 59. I have about 50 years of slides. Okay. This is how it finally progressed. There were no trees there. And this is all growing up after we got there. This is how it came to look with the landmark tree. We finally had to cut the tree down. After he finished, he decided to put up a duplex. And this is the beginning of the duplex, right about 200 feet from the main house. And you can see how barren the land was at that time. My husband bought a tractor, and you can see the little red thing there. He planted trees. He put the shovel under the root and planted trees. We have a forest there now.
Does everybody here know where Rebolds Creek is?
On the way to Kena Island. You can't miss it. Highway Q. Here's my husband making mud pies on the beach side. All right. We called it, he just loved to go on the beach and play, so we called it, he was making mud pies. My mother and father by the creek fishing. They really enjoyed their home after they got it built. It took him many years. And then finally, is there one there? Oh, we had a dump truck and a bulldozer. So we did, I guess I missed the bulldozer. Anyway, my husband and I finally built the barn, we call it. And, oh, sorry, yes. Here's an extra one, 4th of July. I think that's Clayton and Jean's place right there, 1969. And there are more? No. Where is the one? Here. Oh, the next thing I wanted to tell you is that we have a cougar. on our property. And we were able to find it because we had that camera they use for deer hunting. It was on our septic, and it is a cougar. So that's brand new, up to date. This fall. Oh, so, yes. Oh, 4th of July parade, 1969. Yes. Great memories.
Patty. Thank you very, very much. Maybe you could share these. We're having a 4th of July program here. Maybe we could share those with us for the 4th of July. We're having a special program on Bailey's Harbor Force. So thank you very much. Okay, Betty Toms, thank you very much for sharing that, especially about the cougar. I'm not going to go to North Bay for a while. Who's next here? Who would like to, don't be come on, I don't want you to be intimidated by the microphone. Okay, Dorothy Walschlager. Would you like to come up here and say a few things? Dorothy is one of our old timers in Bailey's Harbor. She was a Gry. A Toseland, I'm sorry. So everybody knew their farm. Are you sure you don't want to say something about early farming days in Bailey's Harbor? Are you sure? I mean, that was let's face it, farming in Door County was a big deal at one time. It was one of the best farms, actually, around. What did you grow on the farm? This gentleman over here wants to know what you grew on your farm.
It was a dairy farm, so naturally all the things that you feed cows or whatever.
Right. How long did you own the farm, your family?
Oh, my.
Did you have to milk cows?
No.
Never
no.
milk cows?
No. No, nothing. My mother and I didn't do that.
Was it only the men had to work on the farm, huh? I'm sure the women had things to do too,
How
Dorothy,
long?
you know.
I was 4 years old, so 72. They had a long time. I think well over 50 years, probably near 70.
Where was your farm located?
On County Trunk F, just here about 1.5 miles.
It's now the Gray Farm, is that right? Okay. And is that relatives of the Toselands? Were the Grays relatives? No. Okay. Nobody wanted to take over the farm in your family after, okay. And that happens a lot, doesn't it? Right, right. I think the Gray Farm is the only, isn't that the only dairy farm in Bailey's Harbor now? Is there? I don't think there is anymore. Neswickies do not have, okay, why don't you talk? This is Lauren Pyle.
At one time, there was 13 working dairy farms from Bailey's Harbor to Greenwood on County Trunk F, and the Gray or Toseland Farm is the only one that's in operation to this day.
Paul told me that their dairy farm is the last dairy farm going north in the county, that's the furthest north farm.
And that used to be the business in Dork up here. That was farming, was it? Lauren, do you have any stories you'd like to share with us? Some that you wouldn't want to talk about, I'm sure. So, okay, I'm sure he has a lot of stories, but here's one. Okay. I'm going to give this to Francia Barnard because she is one of the summer visitors. She used to be, and now she's full-time resident.
Well, actually, my story is about my childhood. My grandfather built... Okay.
We still can't.
You later.
Everybody can see you.
My grandfather built Hidden Brook over on the beginning of Ridges Road. So when I was a little girl, that's where we came for vacations. And we had families, good Catholic families with many children in them. So our mothers would send the oldest of us, I from my family, my cousin Janie from her family, to come to stay with our grandmother at Hidden Brook. And this is the place where in the evenings, as the light got dimmer, we would go down to swim often. And without my grandmother there one evening, we decided we would swim without our swimming suits on. We called that chocolate dipping for some reason when I was a child. So my memory of being here is of skinny dipping.
Thank you. Franca, you know, we used your creek always for smelting. Oh, that was the best smelting creek in Bailey's Harbor. So I don't know if your family knows that we wandered up and down their property every spring, but nobody ever caught us and told us not to. So, and now it's the Ridges, absolutely. Franca Barnard, by the way, is also one of Door County's premier poets. She writes wonderful poetry, just so you know. So if you ever find a book, a poetry that she has published, you know it's going to be good. I love her poetry. Okay, let's go back here. Anybody here? Dave Hubbard. When my grandmother owned the old town hall, his father rented it. And I knew he had a business, and I asked Ron what the business was. And he was actually an inventor. He invented some things. Are you an inventor also? No, he's not an inventor. But he and his wife live on Kangaroo Lake. So I think Julie, his wife, parents owned a cottage there, own a cottage?
Yeah, they bought Jack Bacon's place. He used to be like an accountant for the Bailey's Harbor community, and that's who they bought it from in 1975. And then I'm an only child, so I was passed the property on to.
How wonderful. So we know you're going to be around for a while. We look forward to seeing you.
I became a shrink so I could figure out my family.
Still working on it. These two guys back here, Herb and Dave, graduated together from Gibraltar in 1961, and they were two of the very smart pupils of Ernest Visti. So, you know, oh yes. And Herb Crowis here, his family owned the Crowis Orchards, and he was kind enough to do a program for us, was it last June? Okay, and wonderful. It was a wonderful program about his dad. His dad was an inventor, and didn't he actually invent one of the first cherry pickers?
Well,
the automatic ones?
He didn't really invent the picker. The shaker came along, was invented, but what he decided to do was that he could make a catcher on his own, and he mounted it to a tractor on the power takeoff. And it was the very first attempt at it. It was not very successful, so he scrapped that idea. And so then what he really did was he went and built two self-propelled halves of catchers that he mounted this. It was initially they were limb shakers, and so you had to attach the shaker to maybe all the major limbs on a tree. So it was like 3, 4, 5 times you had to shake it. But he built self-propelled halves that was a framework with canvas that would hydraulically the wings would flow out, and he had conveyor on it to convey the cherries out of it into a container. And he used this pretty successfully for many years until the actual trunk shaker came out. And then the trunk shaker was the one where you would just attach it to the trunk. You only had to shake the tree once. And at that time, that was in the late 70s, then he was in a position to be able to buy one of those himself. The very first thing that he really made, it looked like something that I don't know what it looked like, because it was parts that he had gotten from Junkyard Simons, and it was an old, he called it a tractor, but in fact it really wasn't, but it did do the job of a tractor on the farm. And his initial excursion actually into orchard was he mounted a rake on the front, which was really for gathering loose hay before the baler came out. And he saw these cherry growers, after they had done pruning in the spring of the year, they had to pick up all this brush, and they were doing it by hand. It was taking them forever. And he said, gee, he called it a buck rake. And he said, I can go through that. If they put it in windrows in between the rows, I can pick that up. And he went to a neighbor, and he tried it, and it worked pretty well. What he could do in a day would take them a week to do. And once word got out that he had this, he was all over the county every spring with this little old wreck of a thing that, and he needed it for the extra money, actually, to be perfectly honest. And when he decided that he was going to go into the cherry industry, long before it was a dairy farm, but it wasn't successful. The land wasn't good, but he thought the land was adequate for orchard. So the first year in 1956, he bought himself 500 cherry trees and decided he was going to plant them. And he and another fella went out with shovels to start digging holes for this. And they did it for one day and maybe got 50 planted, something like that. And he said, well, that's just never going to do. And so at that time, Murphy Moore from Egg Harbor had a tree hole digger on the back of a tractor and a power takeoff. And my dad contacted him, and he came over, and one afternoon he dug the rest of the holes. And as soon as my dad saw that, he said, that isn't so hard, I can make one of those, you know? So he was up to Orange Simon getting a truck rear end and mounted it on a Ford tractor on power takeoff. And he planted a lot of cherry trees. As a matter of fact, that was in '57 when he made that. And my brother used it this spring to plant his latest batch of cherry trees at 55 years. It's been rebuilt a few times, but nevertheless, it is the same thing that he had. And also, later, as the cherry industry evolved and the orchard industry evolved, with the mechanical shakers, of course, you had all the cherries were put in big pallets, water-contained pallets for transport, and you needed a forklift to haul these things, as well as apples with the 15, 16 bushel pallets that they were picked in. So you needed forklifts for this. So there again, he was back at it. He bought the mast for these forklifts, but he built 2 forklifts that are still in operation that my brother uses for this operation. So he was a pretty inventive guy, and you know, they say necessity is the mother of invention, and that's really is true. And the one thing that I think that I was always so amazed at was the fact that on any of these things that he did, there were no blueprints, patterns, drawings of any kind. He had it all in his head, and he did all the measuring. The most challenging thing the most challenging thing he really built was a sprayer for spraying the orchard. And my dad only had an 8th grade education, and when he attempted to do this, it was a real challenge because it was going to be a 2-wheel trailer type of sprayer, and you have the engine, you have the pump, and you have a 400-gallon tank for the material in there. And where to put that axle in that sprayer so that it would be in balance, whether the tank was empty, half full, or full, without, you know, it really being a hazard, you know. And so there was a lot of rebuilding, changing, and a little bit of swearing. But by the time he got it done, he said, I know I can do it better than that. You know, and he made a second one, and it was better than that. So he was a pretty ingenious guy, and with his mechanical ability that he had, if he would have had an education, I think there would have been no doubt in my mind that he could have been some kind of an engineer. And but he was life, I guess, was his classroom, and so he, I think overall he was pretty successful and pretty happy.
Thank you for sharing that. I could use Charlie Krovis. Okay, how about someone over here? How about you, Mr. Tischler of Tischler Building fame? I'm sure you have a story or two to tell.
My dad was a builder, and 2 of the homes that these 2 ladies just talked about, Mrs. Toslin out there in the Gray Farm, my dad built that home, as you probably know. And he also built the Barnhart home down here in the creek.
Okay, franchise house or family home?
I don't know who owns it now, but yeah.
I don't know. Right, they're distant relatives of Leanne's. Well,
He did, my grandfather built the McCardle home, not my dad, my grandfather, which is across the street over here, yeah.
For all of you in Bailey's Harbor, if you have a Tischler-built house, you know you have a good house. So, and he did carry on his dad's. You did for many years. Absolutely. Thank.
I've got a book with all the pictures of every home that he built and remodeled. No,
How about the next show here?
I don't know how many there are, but my grandfather built, they said it was probably one of the first homes on Kangaroo Lake, which was a seeker home, and it's still owned in that family. It's on the east side. And they also did building on the island, too.
Did he learn the trade from his father then? So that, I mean, you've gone a few generations back then with building?
He did. He was working with his dad out by the Valentine cottages. And his dad, my dad was working with his dad. And his dad was 48 years old, and he died from a massive heart attack. My dad was just a kid. And he finished that home, and he carried on. My dad, yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
It just occurred to me that I've had this question in my mind for years, and there might be people here today who could actually answer it. When I was growing up, the dock in the Anklam Park, we always referred to as the Yacht Club dock. I don't know why, but we always said, right? Okay. Now, when we were working on our postcard collection, I came across a postcard of that dock, and the writing on the, it was an old card, and the writing on the bottom said, Bailey's Harbor Yacht Club. And then the third part of my puzzle is, as I was rooting around in my own house, I came across a membership card that belonged to my dad, and who was Otto John. He and Lenore John was my mother, which was his membership card to the Bailey's Harbor Yacht Club, and it was a nice card. I mean, it wasn't just like the flimsy little membership cards I pass out around here. It was a really nice card, and it was signed by Ben Schrammel, I think, was one of the officers of the club, of this yacht club. Now, what I want to know is, where did this all come from? Were they going to have a yacht club? Did they, I don't know, have any of you who are like older than me who are living here, it would be the late 40s, I'm guessing, and maybe the 1950 to 52. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of this. I don't think I'll ever track it down, but I think maybe it was just a plan.
Do you know? Lauren, do you know? Here, hang on a minute, so you take the microphone, otherwise people can't hear you.
That Bailey's Harbor Yacht Club, I think, got started by George Schmidt and Art Fritz. Art Fritz lived right next door. And I think Homer Parent was involved in that same thing, and they were trying to get some money together to fix up that Anklam dock. I think that's what it is, but I'm not sure.
Well, it sounds logical. I remember, though, your dad always saying that that Anklam dock was never going to last because they didn't put the cribbing in right. So I still remember that. Commercial fishermen ran out. LeClaire. Okay. I'm older than you, and I don't remember that. Good memory. Okay. Margaret Loving. Margaret Loving is formerly of Bailey's Harbor. She lives at the Meadows right now, and her husband was one of our premier plumbers in Bailey's Harbor.
It's delightful to be here today and to see familiar faces, even though I didn't know names that went with it. Our family was one of those families that moved up here from the Chicago area because we loved Door County. And we bought the Goss Farm on Kangaroo Lake, which was the big two-story house on 57 in Kangaroo Lake, near where Lauren and Annie Pyle lived many, many years ago. But it was a delight when we moved here from a suburb of Chicago. Our kids were in 5th grade and 8th grade, and we had lived very close to schools back in Palatine. They just walked a couple blocks, and when we got up here, they were so thrilled because they could take a school bus. It wasn't a real long distance, but they got to take a school bus. And then when the snow fell, they could take their sleds on the school bus and go down the hill by the school. So that was a whole lot of fun for them. And my remembrances of Bailey's Harbor in those days was Olson's grocery store, Anton and Lillian. And I remember going in there and getting wonderful coffee cake and pastries. They always had those things on. So if you came in to shop, they always invited you in. The other thing was Nelson's hardware store, where you could get your laundry done. There were kids down in the basement, and I think many of the kids from Bailey's Harbor got their spending money from Nelson's Hardware from working in that wonderful laundromat that had all kinds of treasures in the wash machine sometimes. I won't go into any detail, but you can have your wildest thoughts and you'd probably come up with what they were. But Phyllis and Gordy were very, very gracious people and put up with all these kids. And our kids, both of them, worked there and loved it. And a little note about the hardware store. I used to go in after school sometimes just to pick some things up, and I'd ask Gordy, he was always at the counter, ask him, and he would say, "Phil, where is that?" And so Phyllis would have to run and get whatever it was. But those are my memories. We lived on Kangaroo Lake until 1996 and sold our house and then moved to the Meadows, which has been a delight. And if any of you are thinking of retiring to a retirement home, I heartily recommend the Meadows. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. So, thank you.
And here I know we have Marge Franke and Betty Weiss, both longtime residents of Bailey's Harbor. I think Betty Weiss played the organ at Emmanuel for over 50 years. Is that right? 40 years. That's still a record. And Marge and Arnie live right outside of Bailey's Harbor, and their son, Dick Franke, who is a stonemason, is now in her original homestead. Did you want to say something?
I remember what used to be the old Anklam Hotel is now where our Emmanuel Church is.
That's correct. That is correct. That is right. That is exactly right. It used to be the old motel. Now, there are faces here that I don't know, and if any of you would be willing to introduce yourself and tell us while you're here, that would be kind of nice, like this lady right sitting on the end. Who are you?
I'm Maureen McGrath, Sandstrom McGrath, and we've been here since 1966. So Pat Tischler built our house, and so did Jim, and so did Jumbo and your brother. It was an interesting house. It's a gorgeous house. It's a beautiful house. And we came up one day, and the foundation was only up a few feet. And we said, "Well, Mr. Tischler, why haven't you gone further?" And he said, "I'm thinking about this." He said, I think this should go 2 more blocks higher. Now, we're talking a 6-foot foundation on scraped land, and it was on bedrock because all the dirt had been scraped off to be put at St. Mary's for foundation. So we said, okay, you're the builder, and we came back up. And in 1985 or 86, when the water was up 5 feet high, We were probably the only house on Ridges Road that didn't have water in the house. In the house, and that's because of Pat. And also, he said, this is one of the best lots. You get the best deer out here. I said, I think he'd shot a few deer. Did you do that with him? No. I'm sure they did it all legally, though, but there wasn't a problem. You were talking about, I go back to the Bailey's Harbor Yacht Club that Burt Weil built. And we went the first night they opened that yacht club. And it was kind of a funny situation because you had to wear a formal gown. Now, you know, we're running around here in jeans and overalls, and that was formal. And the men wore suits. So we went that night, and Mr. Wild was going around that night introducing himself and saying hello to everybody. And that was really very nice. And they had these wonderful champagne glasses that said Bailey's Harbor Yacht Club. Well, I was in the antique business, and thinking ahead, I said to him, Mr. Wild, may we purchase these champagne glasses? And he said, nope. I said, okay. He said, you may have them. So there were 4 of us, so I have 4 champagne glasses, 2 of which I gave Maureen Kelly for her 60th, but she wouldn't tell me which number birthday. I don't really ever know how old she was. She bought the yacht club from several other owners. It's a long list of owners. But I now have all 4 back again. The girls sent them back to me. So there were a lot of other things that went on at the yacht club. Huge boats came in, 65-footers. And my son was a dockmaster there from, probably 8 or 9 years, maybe even longer. And on the 4th of July, he would out of that breakwater that isn't holding up too well, he would tie off 3 and 4 boats as they would come across from Michigan. They'd come in gangs of 5 and 6 boats, and they would just stack them everywhere. He'd have 100 boats in that yacht club, or maybe even more. I can't, but he'd have a big blueprint on the kitchen table, and he'd point out where all these boats were going to go. But 65-footers would come in. We haven't seen that in years. Big sailboats from Mackinac would come in. We haven't seen that in years. And that brought a lot of money to town. It brought a lot of money in the county when the African Queen would come in, and that was Johnson from Ebony Magazine and Johnson Products. She would just hit these jewelry shops up here. And they would know. The phone would ring and everybody would know she was here. And Ray Kroc would come in on where the gray harbor condos are now, was his helicopter pad. And he would come in on his helicopter, and they'd go over and get him on the golf cart. And he had a boat his captain was Bob Christie, and he was on that boat full time. He was also Mr. Kroc's private bodyguard, carried a nice little sidearm. And when they'd go to Gordon's Lodge, because Ray Kroc liked Gordon's Lodge with his wife, Bob would sit two tables behind, but he was there all the time. And they would go to the Gordon's Lodge a lot, as well as the yacht club. So those are old days.
Thank you. Thank you. Those are great memories. We love the Bailey's Harbor Yacht Club. It was always my dream for my kids to get married there, and then, of course, it burned down. That was the end of that dream.
Oh, go ahead.
Hi. Well, I'm Sue Fedina, and my husband and I, Jeff Stanley, are staying at we have the cabin next to where the condos are at the yacht club. And the reason we have that is because my uncle bought that cabin in, my uncle, yeah, well, it's, my uncle is Glenn Peterson. Then they called him Doc Peterson because he was a chiropractor. And so he bought, okay, sure, okay. Okay, so he bought the cabin in 1969 or 70, and he and my grandparents, I think, well, he remodeled the cabin and worked on it, and he and my grandparents moved they kind of lived up here, I think, in the summers, and then eventually they just moved up here and lived here year-round. And after my grandmother passed away, they went and my grandfather and my uncle would go away a little bit in the winters sometimes, but they were around most of the time. I think a lot of people knew my uncle, really, because he took my grandfather around. And then when my uncle passed away in 1992, my parents inherited it, and then I inherited the cabin from them. So, what was I going to say? Well, it's right next to the condos. If you're driving out on Harbor Lane, which is right next to the water, so off of Ridges Road, and you keep going next to the water, and you take Harbor Lane, and you keep going out to the marina, right? The yacht. Right before you get to the condos at the marina, we have the last cabin or the last house there, and it's white and it has red shutters, and it's across the road from the water, and then we also own the little bit of land on the water, and it has a split rail fence. I don't know. See, it has an old, very rustic cedar fence there that.
You know whose door to knock on. We need
Right.
coffee. We take our bite.
Right. Really, yeah. Anyway, so it has a clump of cedars sitting on this really nice rock, and it's a real pretty little site. Right, yeah. So we love being there. We're here in the summers now. So, yeah, and we've been, doing that about 3 years. And so kind of like somebody else had said that they, because they're an only child, they inherited, and I was that's me too. So anyway, yeah. Anyway.
Wonderful. Thank you. Glad you're part.
Mrs. Loving mentioned Olson's grocery store.
Yes.
When we were growing up, there was 2 grocery stores and 5 gas stations in Bailey's Harbor. I sure can. Olson's and Schrammel's grocery store. The gas stations were Kosher's, Keno's, Betcher's, Clayton and Jean's, which Leanne's father owned at one time, and then down here by the Ridges Motel, Hayford's had a gas station on the corner.
Okay, and now I want you to name all the taverns.
I can't do that because I never drank.
Yes. Those of us who went to school might, okay. Okay, I'm okay over here. I'm going to get these people over here now.
I'm Karen Tooze, and my great uncle was Jack Schmitz and George Schmitz. And I was never up here when they were around. I got the stories from my mom because she would spend, maybe from 1919 to 1926 up here with her sister, as far as staying with Uncle Jack. And she used to tell me stories about the Coast Guard station and Captain Moe. And, it was the best time of her life, so she was always, anxious for me to be up here. But this wasn't my place. This was her place, except I had a genealogy hunt. I came up here to trace her roots and fell in love with it myself. So I own a unit over at the Bailey's Harbor Yacht Club. And
You're kind enough to share information.
Right, and I did write a story for the Historical Society from Sturgeon Bay. So that's my history.
What they built. Who built Schmitz Gazables?
What?
Yeah, Schmitz Gazables.
Schmitz Gazable.
You might want to mention what that was, if some people didn't know what
It was the Schmitz, Schmitz Gazable. It was called Schmitz Gazables, right? And they had I know Earl Schramm did a lot of the work on my story, too, because he was a bartender over there. So he had lots of good stories and lots of familiar names for everybody. And all the young kids that didn't want to do cherry picking and instead came over there to work there, was another alternative for them.
It was a wonderful place for dinner. It was one of the old supper clubs.
Right. They had some kind of porch on the outside where they fed the raccoons.
Yes,
And
there were always raccoons, yes.
And then there was lots of stories about the mafia. Right, and I think it was well hidden enough that maybe some of those stories are true.
That's right. Maybe you'd like to pass it to these people behind you.
Oh, well, John Whitney, we've been here, 5 years now? And We were fortunate to be able to come up here to be next to our granddaughter, and our connection with the Historical Society through Christy. And yes, I do have just you were talking about the McCardle Hall. A story about this building. Early on, we came to a Christmas party here, which they're really a lot of fun if you've not been to one, and fortunate enough to be here because we live here full time now. But there was our granddaughter must have been about second grade, and they were Ida, she about second grade, and the music program at that time at the Gibraltar School, actually all the time, was really excellent, particularly for the elementary schools, and they were doing seasonal songs, rationally enough, and her class was not singing Christmas songs, they were singing Hanukkah songs. So in the middle of the Christmas party up here, Ida and a couple of her classmates got up on stage and sang Hanukkah songs during the Christmas celebration. And I thought, that really kind of sums up the place. This is really a nice place to live, and everyone's very open, very accepting, and so we're having a wonderful time.
You were talking about George Schmidt. He was what to you? Great uncle. When I was 14 years old, no driver's license, I was George Schmidt's chauffeur for the summer. I'd ride my bike over there, and he had a 51 Chrysler. It was a new car at that time. First stop was the Rendezvous, south of Max Walton Braes. From there, he went to Art Sorensen's in Jacksonport. And from there, he went to the Beacon, where across from the Mill Supper Club. And from there to Murphy Moore's, then to Casey Lautenbach's, then to the AC Tap and back, and that was all by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I had more chocolate bars than I deserved. No.
No, he didn't have time. Who, these people here, I don't know here, and I'm sure a lot of us don't.
I'm Gil Girdman, and it's my wife Lynn, and I've been coming up to Door County for 70 years. My grandfather was Albert Girdman, who actually had a homestead over where the Coyote Roadhouse is on the west side of the causeway on Kangaroo Lake. And my mother's family was Dorns, and her father was Otto Dorn. Her uncle would have been Charlie Dorn. He had a place up on Limekiln Road and Highway 57 up here. And I can just remember coming to a lot of relatives' houses when I was younger. The Striggs who lived on Old Limekiln Road, they were my mother's aunt and used to go to their little dairy operation. They had about 25 or 30 head of cattle over there, and they used to get up in the morning and milk them, and I'd go out there with them and help milk cows in the morning. And my big treat when I was just a little toddler would be to go down to the pasture, which is where I think Borkenhagen is his name, has got this landscaping operation right now. It's about a half mile down there, and go open up the fence and round up the cows with the dog and bring them back to get milked in the afternoon. And well, I had an uncle in Bailey's Harbor here. I wish my cousin Don was here. He could talk a lot more about his family's history in Bailey's Harbor here. But my uncle had the service station, which is now the 57 Depot down here that he operated for numbers of years. And then he had the movie theater, and my aunt had an antique shop in town here. So been coming up here for quite some time, and my dad liked to fish up here a lot, and I like to fish also. So seen a lot of just the changes in the fishing industry. I can remember as a kid coming up here when the fishermen had lake trout that they were coming in with, and they'd come in with these boats in the spring just full of herring. I can remember one spring, I think it was a pond that boat, it was one of these open boats, and the fishermen were standing above their knees in herring in the boat, and right now there aren't even any herring in Lake Michigan any longer. And so it's been interesting just to... Are those what you call chubs? No, these were a distinctly different, fish. If you go and buy pickled herring in the store, and Lake Superior still has herring, but they've since become extinct in Lake Michigan. But at one point in time, there was quite a viable herring fishery up here out of Door County. My other uncle was Elmer Zahn, who ran the Gordon Orchard for numbers of years. And I got some, memories of that when I used to have the migrant laborers coming up, and they had little camps that they'd set up for them. And I was up here a couple times when they helped set up the camp, and they used to have the cherry processing plant down there in Sturgeon Bay, and I can remember going through that, and there were a lot of primarily women that worked in the cherry plant every year, just separating the chaff from the fruit as it would come down the belt lines there, and then they had this big pile of pits out in the back end of the place that would wash out there and accumulate. And I might say that my dad was a good friend of Charlie Crow's. They went to high school together. Cecil was my dad, yep. And Charlie was kind enough to let him have a little camper out there for 10 years or something on his property, so I think it might. And so I've been knocking around here for quite a number of years, got a lot of fond memories of this. And my wife is from Wausau, and her family had a little cottage on a little lake up there. And we found ourselves coming up to Door County more than we did the little lake in Lincoln County. So we finally got a place over on Ridges Road about 5 years ago and come up here throughout the year and bum around and do different things in retirement.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Let's see. Okay. I'm Sue Hagenbarth. I've lived here in Bailey's Harbor, right in town, for 20 years now. But I don't have any memories, any family connections. But we landed here. We love it here. I have an old house, which I think is probably full of memories, if the walls could talk. But we live on the corner of Ward and Severn, just up the hill from the Lutheran Church. A house with a lot of gardens around it.
Berg's house, Jenny Berg's
Genevieve Burke's house. It was built in 1936, designed by the Chicago architectural firm in the Tribune Tower, where she worked, where she was Colonel McCormick's secretary.
I have
And-
pictures of her, in fact.
Oh, really?
In the scrapbook, I'll give them to you.
Oh, thank you.
My grandmother was a gardener for her.
Oh, okay. Well, she did a splendid job. And I wish I could keep it up as well. The property was enormous. It originally went down to St. Mary's.
Yes, it did, yes.
Yeah. And now there are two other houses
I'm
and
glad to know you.
vacant
I'm glad
lots
to know
there.
that you're
Can I just add something to that?
Yes.
My dad helped work on setting up all those stones there. My mother was pregnant at the time, and she brought from Chicago a hand-sewn little kimono, a little christening dress, and a little slip and a hat. All of us in our family, my brother and my sister and myself, were baptized in that. My grandchildren, I was baptized in it. My grandchildren were baptized in it, and I still have it. And it came from, and it says handmade from Marshall Fields.
Oh, how wonderful. We only have 2 people that we skipped over here. Thank you for that. That was very interesting.
Hi, that's all right. We've been coming up to, we've been coming up to Door County. I've been coming up for over 50 years. My dad just loved this area, and we used to hang out at Sister Bay and then over at Egg Harbor. And then when our kids were grown, we just kind of ended up in Bailey's Harbor at the Harbor Sands. So we've been there about 6 or 7 years and just love it here.
Oh, wonderful.
We're really interested in that old lighthouse too, across
Oh,
the aisle
yes,
there.
that is. That lighthouse. Yes, that lighthouse is very, very interesting. We know it's, I hope I didn't miss anybody. You know, right up here. I missed these 2 here. Chris.
Let Fred talk.
Okay. Let Fred talk.
Hi, Bonnie.
Just say who you are.
Fred Johnson. My mother's from town here. She was in McArdle. I don't know. I live in Sister Bay.
Delphine McCardle, and she was a hairdresser, I remember.
And I haven't found anybody who can cut hair.
And Fred ran the movie theater, because I know that because my daughter worked there when Fred ran the projector and everything. She loved that job. But anyway, I just think it's so cool that the memories that you've shared with us today, you know, some of course have older memories, some have newer, but it's all the history of Bailey's Harbor. And that is what is so neat about it, because if we don't have people talk about it, we won't remember, you know, and like I said, those memories are fading already, and now when there's nobody in front of you anymore, and you're it, you realize how important the questions are that you should have asked and never asked, and so I can't tell you how much I appreciate you all coming today and taking time away from your schedules, and I'm just going to put in a plea too, that if any of you, part-time residents, full-time residents, whatever, if you are interested in joining the Bailey's Harbor Historical Society, and I'm sure Leanne will want to talk more about some of our ambitious plans, but we are also looking for people to serve on the board of directors, and it's a lot of fun, you know, just going through the archives and seeing what we can collect, but it's been just really, really nice having you here today, and we all, on behalf of the Bailey's Harbor Historical Society, really, really appreciate it. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Leanne.
Okay, just a sec. Chris has just a word to say about an important meeting coming up that might interest everybody here.
I am the representative for Bailey's Harbor for the Door County Coastal Byways, and I'm sure now at this point you've all seen the signs up around. This is a program that is sponsored by the United States Highway Department, or the Federal Highway Department, and their goal is to promote interest in tourism in different areas around the country. The Door County Coastal Byways has been in existence now this is almost our third year. One of the big things that we've been able to do is we've secured some wonderful grants for the county. People have to apply for the grants. It has to be cleared through our local association, go on to the state and the federal. Part of the funds that we're able to purchase the farm, the Grandview Farm in Ellison Bay, came from the Coastal Byways funds. Bailey's Harbor last year received funds to redo Anclam Park. This next year, also the Coastal Byways is doing now an interpretive plan, which is something that has to be done before we can proceed any further with increasing the information we're able to put out about the byways. The interpretive plan is being done by the Schmeeckley Reserve, which is out of the University of Stevens Point, the University of Wisconsin Stevens Point. And right now they're gathering information, and on the 6th of June at 4 o'clock, the people from Schmeeckley will be here in Bailey's Harbor to talk to the Bailey's Harbor residents. They will have a little 15-minute presentation telling about what they do and how they go about doing it. Things they'd like to know is what makes the town unique. What do we people know about this town that keeps it unique, that keeps it quaint like it is? And what is the sense of place? Why is it here? What is its being? What is its purpose? And then what are some of the can't miss things here in town? So if anybody has some free time that afternoon and would like to participate, listen to what they have and offer suggestions, we'd love to have you here. The meeting will be here in the town hall, 6 o'clock on June 4th. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Chris. I don't think I'm going to be able to be here, but I sure would like to be here for that. Now, I just need to remind you of a couple things of the rest of our programs for the summer. Will be June 7th. Russell Leitz is going to discuss Bailey's Harbor shipwrecks in the harbor, which I think should be really interesting. He belongs to the Wisconsin Underwater Archaeology Association, so he's not just a dabbler. I mean, he's the real stuff. On the 23rd of June, we are going to do a Bailey's Harbor 4th of July retrospective. We have got pictures. We have films. Going back quite a long way. And I think it'll be fun to see some of those old floats and maybe some memories. Maybe somebody here remembers marching in those woolen Gibraltar band uniforms, you know, as opposed to now they're wearing little, you know, shorts and a T-shirt. They had us all togged out in the thickest grade wool I think that is ever made. Something else. Oh, and come early if you can that day. The program starts at 2 o'clock, but we plan to have stuff out for you to see. Plus, we're going to offer a brat, a root beer, and a brownie for $5 for a little lunch, just for the holiday spirit of it all. Yeah. So I'll probably be here by 1, maybe? Yes, please. Yeah. I'll put it in the advertising. In July, on the 18th at 7 p.m., Kangaroo Lake will be discussed by Patty Williamson, who's done a book on that topic. And August 21st at 7 p.m., the Ridges Sanctuary is going to do a history of the Ridges. It's their 75th anniversary this year, like for the town hall. That must have been a big year in this town. I'm thinking, I think the Golden Gate Bridge was done that year.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
So, yes, I think those will all be fun to see. And I just have to say, I really enjoyed this program today because the first half, it was just so interesting. But the second half was so interesting. But this, I do the membership. So I'm the person sending you the letters and sending you the membership cards. And, sending you the stuff by email. And now, like, I know who Sue and Jeff are, that I've been corresponding with. It's fun. And several people over here, too. So that was just fun for me to see and hear the voices of those people that I didn't know, but correspond with all the time. So I love that.